Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gonna teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Mike Washington is still out on assignment, so we have none other than the legend, Dave. Man, Aggie Esports. I see you, Dave Rhodes. How's it going today?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. Appreciate the invite. I'm looking forward to this to talk about HBCU sports today. So let's get at it, man.
Let's get at it. Charles, how are you doing today?
We're doing well, Doc. We got an opportunity to watch the Dean in action today. That was good stuff today. That was enjoyed it.
What you referencing? What are you referencing? Let me get this intro and then we'll let you explain.
Okay.
Exactly a nice little tease on it. And I liked it. This is Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Welcome to episode 536 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, a show that's covering the sporting HBCU diaspora, all things HBCU sports for institutions large and small. From the NAIA to the NCAA, we share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to KCWA's 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, Ralph Cooper, multi-Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper, in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. With that being said, Charles, you were talking a little bit about something. What were you referencing there? You dropping a dime?
Yeah, well, we started off our, Faculty Institute as all the faculty coming back to Texas Southern, and we had our College of Education meeting this morning. And I have to say, Doc, you brought the fire. You brought the fire today. That was a good presentation.
I appreciate it. I try to represent for all the HBCUs out there as we talk about on the show. And since going back and the collective people have given my nickname the Dean, and I'm actually serving as the Dean of the College of Education here at Texas Southern University, I figure I'd make sure I make everybody proud and represent and wear correctly, as they would say.
Doc, you had football coach vibes going today. Get 1% better. I like that. That's good stuff.
That's what you have to do as the dean, though. I mean, that's what you got to do, Charles. That's what you're supposed to do.
David, as we like to call you, you should have sent me up there. I channeled my inner coach move. I don't know which coach I want. Should I go back to one of the legendary coaches of HBCU sports? What legendary coach you think about, Charles, in your frame of mind, since we're talking about these?
Well, you definitely had some Eddie Robinson vibes going today with the motivation. So I was impressed. I was very impressed. Yes, indeed.
Shout out to brother Eddie Robinson in terms of that. With that being going on, you like the Greek life, so we got another Greek person in here. I'm gonna let him share a little bit of that love, which includes the production part of the team. Man, there's a lot of brothers out there. Go ahead, Dave. Tell them what you represent.
The Brothers of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, Ada chapter.
So all the blue and white. Good Lord.
And nothing wrong with the blue and white. Nothing wrong with the blue and white. But we gotta even it up a little bit, We gotta even the field a little bit. We gotta even the field just a tad,
Yes. Well, Dave, I'm gonna let you show off a little bit. Talk about some of the legendary coaches that come to mind in the HBCU world of football. Obviously, we have many in terms of basketball, men's and women's. We have some on the baseball side, track and field, across the landscape for multiple sports. But since we're in football season, who comes to mind when you talk about football legends Obviously now independent in a lot of ways as we talk about HBCU representing. I guess I'm gonna be nice today. I'm not gonna say Colonial. Oh, did I say that? Coastal Athletic?
You look, man. It's the coastal.
Previously, you were attached with the MEAC, and you still show love for the MEAC in all due respect.
Absolutely,
which I really appreciate about what you do. But with that, you've got a lot of experience yourself. What comes to mind when we talk about legendary coach?
As a student at North Carolina A&T, we had a legendary one known as Bill Hayes.
I knew.
So if you want to talk about a legendary coach, it's going to be Bill Hayes. I got to meet him during the golf tournament last year that we do at A&T. Phenomenal human being. And then if you want to go a little bit more current, who's now retired, is Rob Broadway. Fun fact, crazy story about
how far are they between the two? I was gonna ask that. That's a good one.
Ooh. I mean, I think the thing for me, man, like as a student, I had Bill Hayes, but Broadway literally pulled miracles up to fix our football program. So I'm going to have our Broadway to nod there from that standpoint. Like he pulled miracles. Like I don't think folks realize. Like folks are picking on A&T about their previous season, their last season, but I have sat through as an alumnus much worse, and Broadway got us out of that. I got to meet his barber when I was down visiting my family in Myrtle Beach, which was an interesting story to say the least. I was wearing my A&T shirt, and the barber was like, "Do you know Rob Broadway?" I was like, "Yeah, he coached A&T for years." It was like, I cut his hair, and he called him right on the spot, and I got to thank him. So that was pretty awesome.
Good stuff. Charles, I'm going to go back to you since Dave pulled out two out of the hat. He so much love for the Aggies. Boy, I tell you, I got to get used to this. Anybody else you want to give? You want to go to a Jackson State legend? Who, if I force you to do that, I know it's tough to name one, but where are you going?
Yeah, of course I can go Jackson State legend W.C. Gordon, but just in growing up within the SWAC, I mean, when you're talking about legends, I lived during Archie Cooley, Marino Castle, and W.C. Gordon and Eddie Robinson all going at each other. So that was phenomenal. Then I get to Jackson State, and St. Pete Richardson steps in with Southern. So I say St. Pete because he brought Southern. You know, Southern. In the 80s, I used to enjoy Jackson State Southern rivalry, the bands, but it got different in the 90s. Yeah, they really came on with the come on in the 90s. So those are some legends that I grew up with in the SWAC.
Might have lost them.
Might have lost the Doc, but I mean, we can continue going, and we normally get into this section where we start talking about news and notes, David, around HBCU, the HBCU environment, and I want to start things off giving acknowledgement. Since we're talking about North Carolina A&T, I wanted to mention the passing of the great Al Adams, basketball legend and basketball Hall of Famer. And this story comes to us from HBCU Sports. Al Adams, who starred at North Carolina A&T before embarking on a successful NBA career as a player and coach. He passed away on Wednesday. He was 87. He was a native of Newark, New Jersey, and played for the legendary North Carolina A&T basketball coach Cal Irvin from 1956 to 1960. He finished at A&T with a degree in physical education and history, and he led the Aggies to consecutive CIAA titles in 1958 and 59. The great Al Adams.
The only man who has his jersey retired and up in the rafters at Club Corbett, the Corbett Sports Center in A&T.
Wow.
The only retired jersey we have up there.
I like Carol jumped in there and did Billy Nix. You know, Prairie View guy, I got to give me some Billy Nix. And what I think is unfortunate about Billy Nix is because of what happened to Prairie View, obviously in the late 80s and 90s. I think Prairie View became a figment of a lot of people's imagination for the worst things. David talked about there was a period of the Aggies that went through that, but I think it was obviously much shorter. The year may have been bad, but we had years that were bad. So because of that, I think over a period of time, Billy Nix has kind of been lost in terms of his legend in this, certainly this newer generation, but even like you said, the past generations. But you talking about somebody contemporary of his peers, when you think about Jake Gaither, Eddie Robinson was on the back end. You talk about the greats at Southern, legendary Mumford. He had a winning record against all those things. And you talk about the fact that he had those 5 championships at Prairie A&M University, certainly is one that put up there. And obviously we have an article we did with Brian that talked about the legends, where we gave honor. And I think it surprised a lot of folks when we put Billy Nix out there and they started reading. They was like, oh, okay. So I'm glad that y'all had to do that. Before we take this next step and get in our first break, let's go to you, Charles, and give me what's on your mind in terms of some of HBCU news of the day.
Yeah, I had mentioned the passing of the legendary Al Adams, who passed away this past Wednesday. But some other news surround HBCU news is the HBCU Athletic Conference. They will be holding their future basketball tournaments in Alabama. Another story that comes to us from HBCU Sports. The HBCU Athletic Conference has secured a deal that will continue a strong partnership for its postseason basketball tournament. The league announced on Thursday that the men's and women's tournament will be held in 2025 and 2026 at Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So big news coming out of the HBCU Athletic Conference.
Good stuff. Shout out to the HBCU Athletic Conference bucket list. I'm going to have to go get into some of those basketball games down there against some of those rivals, particularly give me a good reason to get to New Orleans to see that Dillard and Xavier. I know some people questioning the level of their rival because only Dillard is in the HBCU AC with Xavier being in the Red River Athletic Conference, but I still hear it goes down. So I want a piece of that. Another one I want to get to before we get back to some football is I got to get to that Atlanta game between Morehouse and Clark Carolina. I got to be the one person. I got to see that. With that being said, Dave, I know, as you said, you legendary Aggie programs in basketball for so long period of time that people may not realize coming out of here in a lot of ways, those that don't go back that far. But with that being said, in terms of some of the modern stuff, what's on your mind in terms of the HBCU news of the day?
Shout out to Clark Atlanta University. They received a record-breaking 46,000 prospective students that applied to be part of their freshman class with only 1,200 slides. That's unbelievable. That was more than the University of Georgia. Article from HBCU Game Day talking about this. For only 1,200 seats is less than phenomenal. The class is large, but it's also accomplished. The average GPA of the incoming students is a 3.71. 5 years ago, it was only a 2.8. Damn. So the brand is strong. Their retention and graduation rates are increasing, and that's what these numbers are indicators of. And overall enrollment at Clark Atlanta is 4,200. So I think to get so many students interested in Clark Atlanta University is like outstanding.
Well done. It's already when you talk about that.
So
I like that piece, and Charles knows this. You've heard me talk a little bit about this on the HBCU Nightly, where you co-host that great show where the great deal of the focus is on the MEAC. But obviously they talk about all HBCUs, and it gets intriguing when you talk about some of that SWAC, MEAC fodder that goes on there. But I'm so excited with that thing together. You got BJ on there that represents for the SWAC. Joshua kind of leads the way for the MEAC. But then with you on there, you got your old tales from the MEAC, and you get into that North Carolina Central Aggie stuff, which is bringing a new level of folks that understand how that rivalry is what it is to a lot of folks. It's fascinating there. And then there's the question whether Morgan State and Howard is a rival, which is hilarious to me, which is totally pouring us in the SWAC country about that. But I say all that because Charles, you've heard me talk about this. You've read the papers I talk about. I told anybody that would give me the time of day, and this is going on 15 years, is Clark Atlanta University, the Panthers, is the greatest sleeping giant out there for a private institution.
Yeah.
Anybody would listen to me, and I told people early, I said, go recruit those folks. Bring those in your conference. SWAC, I said, go get them. SWAC is because it brings you Atlanta market. SWAC has did the next best thing. They played some of the conference championship games. You heard basketball. Previous baseball was there. But I said, go get them. MEAC folks, obviously, there was talk about Morehouse. I thought it was a brilliant move, but I was like, you're sleeping. Go get it, Clark Atlanta. That's
you get the duo. You get them both.
Yeah.
Get the rivalry with
right.
you. Get them both.
And just to remind people real quickly, I mean, what makes them a sleeping giant? What makes them a jewel is within this
I'm glad you asked that. One of the things out there is you were talking about earlier when we talk about academics. We had the Board of Regents Johnson, graduate doctoral EDD graduate from the program that has risen up the ranks and is now on the board of Texas Southern University. You saw so many of the connected folks in there in different ways that are in leadership positions. But people don't realize Clark Atlanta, because athletics has not been that strong, we can be front with that. People do not associate it academically in terms of the brand intensity it is. But it is the only D2 HBCU, if we look at it from athletics, that has R2 status. There are only 11 HBCUs at this time that have R2 status. And many of them are on a race to get to R1. People don't understand because you talk about Morgan State, North Carolina A&T, Jackson State, Texas Southern, and their push to move to R1 status, FAMU, make sure I get them in there, and the other ones. Another one that is pushing and well on their way is Clark Atlanta University. So while we get all caught up in athletics, and I think with the leadership they have of Dr. French, and he has a great video out there where he's walking the yard, reminding of us when we were in school, if you had some of those legendary presidents across the landscape that were visible, and students fell in love with the perspective of what they saw in a president, in many cases happen to be men, some women as well, but what it meant to be at that beacon. You can see when he's on the yard and talking to students, how many come up to him. And he's having conversations, knowing many of them name, they're majors. That's what creates a culture that is unique when you have a university president that can walk around the campus and folks respect him, but at the same time, see the uniqueness in terms of what that looks like. Atlanta University was a graduate school program, AUC Center, no doubt about it, Jeff. For those that did not know about that, it was Clark College, Atlanta University, the graduate program, and they merged. And now they are stronger than ever when you connect what the graduate school does in terms of the research, along with some of the undergraduate components. You have Clark Atlanta University. And I will continue to tell everybody, when we look at this conference churning, one of the preeminent schools to look at out there, obviously a lot of folks look at Tennessee State, no doubt. R2, they're out there and should be one you looked at. Morehouse in terms of the brand, Tuskegee in terms of the brand in a lot of ways, but one that you got to keep your eyes on if you know anything about the business of understanding how you take the next level. It's Clark University in that major city of Atlanta University that continues to grow. What many people says is a mecca for African Americans, and you see why. And this is another indication to show you why I talk about it. So thank you for asking that question, Charles. Let's take our first break, come back on the other side, and get into some football talk. On Tuesday, we broke down, for those that may have missed it, obviously those are there, we broke down the matchup. We looked at it in terms of FAMU on an offensive perspective, Norfolk on a defensive perspective. We're going to flip it. Today, we're going to look at Norfolk State from an offensive perspective, and then in the segment 3, we'll look at FAMU defensively, which I think is one that you can't wait to hear about, because that is going to be the reason in a lot of people's eyes that have them at the top of the conference in the SWAC, and see if they can start in Atlanta and finish in Atlanta, go back-to-back for national champions. Many people, if that's going to be done, as they pick them first or second in multiple polls, it's going to be based first on what they do defensively. Let us tell you why. With that being said, let's take our first break, and we'll come back on the other side, and we'll first talk about Norfolk State and their offense, particularly the big news that came out this week of how that may change some things in these two gentlemen's eyes. Stick with us. We'll be right back after our first break.
At Automasters LLC, our mission is to serve our community by providing quality automobiles at affordable prices. All of our vehicles are inspected and certified to offer you the confidence in knowing you have a quality vehicle. Our goal is to provide you with a seamless process and positive experience for your automobile purchase. Financing recommendations and specific vehicle inquiries are available at your request. You can find us at www.automasters06.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Also, please feel free to contact Terrence Miles at 601-927-7794. And oh yeah, tell him Sonia sent you.
If you think all pads are exactly the same, think again. This is Always Ultra Thins reinvented with the Always Triple Protection System. This pad wicks gushes 90% faster, absorbs even more so you can feel dry, and locks odors in. Rethink your pad for up to 100% leak-free and odor-free comfort with the totally reinvented Always Ultra Thins. This is always like never before.
The Cavil Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cavil.
Atlanta, Georgia. The HBCU football capital hosts the Cricket MEAC SWAC Challenge on August 24th. Florida A&M Rattlers, Norfolk State Spartans. SWAC versus MEAC. The rivalry is real. Come out to Center Park Stadium to see the returning HBCU national champions and two of the best HBCU bands in the land, the Marching 100 and the Spartan Legion. The day starts with a kickoff fan experience tailgate and concludes with a primetime matchup on ABC. For more information, visit MEACSWACChallenge.com.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
Welcome back into Dr. Ville's Inside
HBCU Sports Lab. Holding it down. Thank you there, Charles. As I was doing a little cheat notes there, getting ready for this intro and snuck up on me as we have it. With that being said, I want to get right into it, but I'm going to give some updates to kind of do this. I didn't realize that North Carolina A&T, since we got an Aggie on the show today, that A&T has only played in the MEAC SWAC Challenge one time.
Yeah. We're undefeated, though. It was a Tariq Cohen show. It was a Tariq Cohen show.
Yeah. And he got down.
Alabama
A&M.
What a
Alabama
A&M,
47-13. Yeah, he kind of stepped on the stage before he did it in the Celebration Bowl.
Yes, he did.
Let everybody know that he was the real deal. When we talk about Norfolk State, obviously the news came out that Otto is out in terms of not just for this game, but for the first four games, which is a whole nother discussion. But I was fascinated in terms of your first team quarterback, Otto Coons, in terms of he was the lone person for Norfolk State on the first team, MEAC.
Yeah.
This is a 6-member conference where you get a lot of chances to be on it. Well, to the credit, second team, you do have the running back, Kevin King, and then you have three from the offensive line, including the center. When you talk about Garrison Wheatley, while Kevin King is from Chesapeake, Virginia, you have Wheatley that's from Johns Island, South Carolina. Vincent Bird Jr., a junior from Stafford, Virginia, as the first. King was a junior and Wheatley is a senior. So some maturity on that line, but you have a sophomore offensive lineman, Samuel Eskridge, from Kings Mountain, North Carolina. Fascinating when you look at it in terms of Norfolk State offense. Charles, what are your thoughts in terms of this matchup, and where do you start after you heard the news that they lost their quarterback for this game?
Well, I think it changes up things quite a bit. And when we talk about going into the season, a lot of intrigue with a lot of moving parts, but there were some constants at least. And one of the constants was Otto Coombs coming back for Norfolk State. For him to not be in the mix, to me, that changes things up dramatically. But as you mentioned, all conference performer running back, all conference offensive lineman, second team all conference offensive lineman. I think that's a prescription for what you got to do. But kind of the crazy thing is we don't know. We just don't know what are the weapons that are on the outside and whether they can get the ball to the weapons. Looking at Florida A&M last year, it was the defense, the Dark Cloud defense, that set the tone, especially when you talked about their depth at the defensive line. Do they bring back this same Dark Cloud defense that we saw last year that was literally able to wear down teams last year in the SWAC and could take over games? So I think that's the thing that I really take a look at, because I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued whether you've got some talent for Norfolk State here on the offensive side of the ball, but it comes from the ground game. And we know Dawson Odom. He can rely on the ground game quite well. So I think that's an intriguing aspect to this game.
So from my perspective, I do agree missing your experienced quarterback is going to be a factor, but just like you said about Dawson Odom, he likes to pound the rock and he likes to run the ball. So having that offensive line is going to be a huge factor. So I'm very curious to see if, and we're going to get into defense, if FAMU's defense is going to return, because if it comes down to the trenches, Norfolk State could slow this game down and make it interesting fast.
And that's a MEAC thing.
Oh yeah.
They beat you up in the trenches. So.
Oh yeah.
And when they beat you up in the trenches, got the chip on their shoulder. We ain't got a quarterback with us. It's an interesting prescription for Florida A&M coming into this game.
They're saying that Jalen Daniels was competing with Coombs for the starting position as it is, and he has been getting the first team reps. So it gives the indication that Coach Odoms was aware that this could be coming down the pike from that standpoint. So he prepared accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
But he did come from Jalen Daniels came from Garden City Community College. So obviously he doesn't have Division I experience. But if you have a good offensive line, because I'm all about up front, man. So if you got a good offensive line and you can run that ball, you might give the quarterback some opportunities there. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm stacking the box all day. You're going to have to beat me up running the ball.
You will. As you should. But but their offensive line is legit. They have a lot of returning starters. So, that experience matters. Coaching matters. They have a new offensive coordinator, Jason Phillips. So, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen with that regard. But we know that Norfolk State with Dawson Owens is going to want to run the ball. I think it's going to be obvious. He'll tell you that in the press conference. He's going to try to run the ball on you. So,
Dave, let me ask you this question for those that may not be as familiar with this. And I love this for our CIAA people, SIAC fans that are on here as well, as our MEAC fans that follow us. Tell us a little bit about this matchup from your perspective. Some of the rivalries we seem to have heard about in terms of the MEAC before you see the churning in the membership. A lot of people talked about, obviously, the FAMU Bethune-Cookman is in and of itself state matchup between public-private institutions. But you had that A&T and FAMU rivalry off and on that was very big. And pretty much as things kind of went before they left both programs, that was a big matchup in terms of going back and forth a couple of years. Obviously, you had FAMU and Howard was one of those things for a while. What are your thoughts from your perspective when you thought about the Norfolk State FAMU matchup? Obviously, we only have 5 games being played there, even though both teams have been in the conference for a while, because at that time you had more.
Lost him again. Okay.
Yeah. Well, just follow up on the question in terms of looking at the rivalry, David.
Well, so for me, that game, like they have, like Dr. Cavil was saying, they have not played that often. And FAMU is pretty much from a.
Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that matchup, the rivalry, or what you would call it, because I'm not sure if it's even designated as a rivalry. From a fan's perspective, what do you see?
I'm going to be honest with you guys, from a rivalry standpoint for the game, they have not played that often. They didn't play that often when they were in the MEAC.
Right.
So like But one thing's for sure, I don't have the series up right now, but I know FAMU has a dominant score on the series. I think I believe
it was 5 games, 4 wins for FAMU and only 1. It was a home loss for FAMU. Norfolk went on the road and got the win that time. So you're absolutely
rarity.
Right.
Yeah. So because of that, my argument as a student was always is more about the bands with those two, because FAMU has dominated that series, man. Because the marching, let me tell you something, the Spartan Legion and the Marching 100, man, they go at it. So in that regard, it's going to be fun for the game this weekend. So I hope they televise, because I would like to watch that as well. But as for the football game, it's never really, I've never seen that as a rivalry. Just like Erica doesn't see Howard as a rivalry to Morgan State. Like I just never seen that as a rivalry.
Shout out to
Eric. So for me, like, you have FAMU and Bethune, FAMU and A&T. They've had their run-ins a few times. But from that standpoint, I never really saw like FAMU Norfolk as one of those big rivalries. And obviously the MEAC schedulers didn't play that much while they're in the conference together.
So no doubt. Charles, as we talk a little bit introduction to band before we go into our second break, marching sport. I've introduced the ranking for the last 3 years, and one of the big things that I put out there, shout out to AD Drew when he had Celebration Bowl Executive Director John Grant on. He talked about he said, hey, there's a win and loss in this matchup. He said, well, blame that on Dr. Ville. He had me on the marching sport. It's a competition. There got to be a winner and a loser, which is another discussion. Mm-hmm. But to Dave's point, I imagine because of the distance, even though you had this big band thing, I'm sure that they didn't necessarily face off band to band that often, just because of the travel associated with it, which is one of the reasons they didn't play that often as a conference matchup. Yeah. What are you looking forward in terms of the band matchup, particularly now that you have at the end of the year the HBCU Band of the Year? You kick off things Sunday right here in Houston with the National HBCU Battle of the Bands, which Norfolk has participated several times and shown many people in this area what they're made of.
Yeah, even though Brandon King said he was underwhelmed, but I will say this, that
Brandon's a tough man.
I'm looking forward to this matchup, because we just don't see both of these bands sort of get into the mix, sort of get into a battle stance, if you will. So, the fact that you get the Spartan Legion, growing up here in SWAC country, to kind of check out some of the MEAC bands is kind of interesting. It's a little different, but they have a robust, crisp sound. I was tremendously impressed with them when they came down here to Houston last year for the National Battle of the Bands. And then, of course, we've had an opportunity to watch FAMU, and like my dear frat brother who looks at all these bands all the time, he's like, FAMU is going to be FAMU. They're not going to veer off what they do great. They provide you a great panoramic sound, if you will. So to get both of these bands to actually lock horns, because, let's face facts, we don't see FAMU travel beyond the confines of Tallahassee. They might get to Montgomery, they might get to Huntsville, but we really don't see them venture out beyond that. But to actually see them battle, I'm going to enjoy that. That's going to be fun.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm telling you that, man. And this could be something that could be submitted. This could be a submission for the Band of the Year.
You can go back and check it out. For those that may not have called it, Executive Director John Grant was on Brian and AD's Sports Wrap this past Sunday, and he talked about that's an option, that you can submit this. He didn't think they probably would, because it's the first one out the box. But hey, somebody might knock it out and drag it down and get it done. So it is an option. So it's one to keep on. Just as also was said on there for people that didn't catch it, if you're watching it streaming, you can see the whole halftime show. So make sure you check it out. As you know, the over-air broadcast will go to the normal halftime show where they're talking about football and things of that nature. But if you keep it on your streaming or switch to your streaming show, you will be ESPN Watch. You will be able to catch the entire halftime. So I'm fascinated on that. I do want to give a shout out, as you said, Brandon King, the battle of these independents now with North Carolina A&T, as well as Tennessee State and Hampton, which we're working together. We're working to put a show together as we kind of tease this out, is a great time to kind of put that together. And Dave will be leading that platform where we have inside the HBCU Sports Lab. We'll look at doing multiple days of the week, and we'll bring in different leaders, as you kind of saw Charles leading things off when I took my sabbatical. We're going to extend that to even the next level, where we'll bring these folks to lead inside the HBCU Sports Lab, and we'll do it from a perspective where we'll have a D2 perspective where we'll get more love in terms of CIAA, SIEC, and the IA programs. We'll have a program leading in on that. We'll go into the independents, give them some lead with the Aggies, Hampton, and Tennessee State, giving you some updates of what it looks like in terms of the travel that they have, some of those HBCU matchups they have, and then when they get into conference play, we'll talk about that as well. So keep your eyes on that. That is something that we look to jump off, and then we'll look at even maybe giving you some Friday night lights in terms of what that looks like with a different perspective that kind of leans on maybe some high school stuff, some perspectives of the pro, as we look at doing some things with Kyle Mosley, Wilton Jackson, bringing some stuff on Friday nights of where that fits. And so look for us to spread the love in terms of inside the HBCU Sports Lab and see what that looks like. So keep following as we give you an update of when you can find more information about that. Great tease, and so I'm glad you set that up for me, Charles and Dave. With that, we'll take a second break, come back on the other side. We'll finally get into the FAMU defense. It is supposed to be the best unit out there among all HBCUs. We'll see what these guys think about that, whether that holds true in terms of what they've studied this year. Stick with us. Be right back after this break.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Supermarket sushi, really?
No. Wait, Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working, huh?
Oh, Troy, you're such a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. Never not working. Never not working. Never, ever not working.
Are you serious?
Never not working. Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology.
Hey, grab me one too.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Let's talk a little bit about this defense. If you followed ONG Strike Zone, Brian and the team down there, Kelvin, they were pretty straightforward that they see that the FAMU Rattlers defense is going to be all that and then some when you think about it. First teamers of what they got done. I'm fascinated to see what that looks like. So I'm going to stick with you, Dave. What are your thoughts in terms of this FAMU defense? Is it as vaunted as some people think that it should be? Obviously, you see the rankings. Most people out there, I think there are about essentially 3-4 teams that are ranked number one, and among those is FAMU. Some people have Central, like we do on Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, but right behind them, I do have FAMU, and some people have FAMU outright. What are your thoughts in terms of FAMU's defense?
I think FAMU's defense is legit. Among the best of HBCU for sure. I mean, I definitely will put Morgan and Alabama State's defense ahead of them right now as a cohesive unit. But top three ain't nothing to sniff at, right? But they also have some NFL prospects. Kendall Bowler, man, from FAMU, he's for real. Defensive back for them, he's for real. I mean, they had 2 all-SWAC first-team defensive backs. So with him, Kendall Bowler, and Deacon Wilson. So I think their defense is still legit. I'm fascinated to see if they can keep that rolling because they got a new defensive coordinator as well. So it's going to be interesting. I think we have a habit of not realizing that coaching matters. But I think with Coach Colsey, with him having the defensive chops, they should be okay. But it matters, man. I'm a coaching matter type of guy too. You got to have the schemes to make it work. So.
Yeah, and on your other responsibilities, obviously you do a show dedicated to Carolina Panthers. Give us some shout out and love for that.
Yep.
And so unfortunately on that side, you really had the understanding to talk about coaching matters. And obviously that's the NFL matters there, but that's not the only place it matters. So that's a good point. Charles has tried to share us multiple times on that issue in terms of coaching matters. Charles, you can share a little more about that, and then we'll get into your thoughts in terms of where you are on this FAMU defense.
Well, I want to get into my thoughts on where with this Florida A&M defense.
Do you believe they are a bag of chips?
What are we basing it on? I mean, I don't see not one first teamer, SWAC first teamer on the defensive line, and that's where they made their bones last year. Now, granted, Coach Colsey, he comes from the defensive side of the ball, and Kendall Bowler is an NFL prospect. But I mean, are we really going to get a really good barometer against Norfolk State? That's the question that I'm curious about. I mean,
well, from the one point, I think it'd be interesting, particularly when you talk about that front line, the linebackers. They're going to have to make their plays. But boy, you talking about one thing, Norfolk, you got to imagine, particularly with the quarterback out. To your point, they're going to try to run the ball. So we should get a pretty good glimpse to see what FAMU can do against the run. That's for sure, right? And particularly how effective they can be with those up front. Go ahead, Dave.
We will know very quickly if that defensive line is legit. We're going to find out within the first couple of minutes of that game if that defensive line is legit. Because if it's not, it's going to be a long day. Because you're not going to want to throw. You got 2 all-SWAC guys and an NFL prospect on the defensive back side of the ball.
Precisely.
You're not going to try to throw to that.
Precisely. And I'll just use the Florida A&M logic that they used on me in 2023. You can't lose that amount of talent and just expect for things just to be exactly what it's going to be.
But hey, just like they probably think everything's going to be okay.
No, Charles was one of the first out there, as much as he had for TC Taylor, and he liked what TC Taylor was beginning to build. He said TC Taylor would get there. But he was one of the first out there and said Jackson State will be okay, but they've lost a lot of talent. He didn't see them fighting necessarily for the top of the conference. He wanted to see a strong, respectful season, and I think they got that.
74 is nothing to sniff at.
But
all the guys y'all lost, man.
Yes, that's true. But back to this matchup in terms of that, I do want to ask you, Charles, this perspective, and then I'll get your thoughts on this as well. Obviously, when we think about this great secondary of FAMU, what are your expectations of what they can do against the run? All the times, it'd be nice if your front 7, certainly your front 4, and your linebackers can make plays. But if you're going to be really effective in the run, you're going to need those deep backs, particularly if you know a team's going to run, to kind of sneak down, make it challenging, and make do a little more faster. What do you see about the back end being able to get into some tackles on this game?
Well, I think to David's point, I mean that's one of the things that you're going to start kind of taking a look at. Does Florida A&M have to commit an extra person to help out to load the box, if you will? And I'm until y'all prove that y'all can throw on these corners that I got. Yeah, I'm gonna have 8 guys sitting somewhere, packing the box, if you will. So I think that's going to be a very interesting cat and mouse game. It could open up some things deep for Norfolk State, but I think we're all expecting Norfolk State to try to run the football heavy, and that's going to be one of those early indicators whether there's a red flag or whether Florida A&M's defense is still legit because they didn't lose much with regards to the defensive line and the backers.
Jimmy Wilson sneaks in here and says the Tigers going to be first or second. Dave, going to give me your thoughts in terms of that secondary. particularly of how effective you think they can be in terms of the run?
I mean, I think they'll come up and hit, and I think like I said before with Bowler, I think he's probably going to be willing to come up there and hit. Now, that being said, I'm pretty sure you probably prefer not to do that because most cornerbacks don't like to hit. That's not something they prefer to do. But I think they're going to be willing to go and put their nose out there and do what they need to do. Because otherwise, it's going to be a long day. Like I mean, they got a two-headed monster over there in Norfolk State, so it's going to be a long day. It's going to be a long day if that defensive line is not the same that was what they expect them to be. If it's not what FAMU expects them to be, it's going to be a long day.
Tell the boys, show me, teach me. Teach me.
It's going to be fun because I love to watch those type of games, man. I like the slow games, the slow burns, because it stays competitive, gets you off your seat. I don't need to always have the big plays. These are the trench play games. These are the type of games I like to see. So I'm kind of looking forward to that if it comes down that way.
He got spoiled with Broadway a little bit in terms of physicality of offensive team, not being too excited about just passing the ball. If you can run effectively, mixing the pass, you can get things done. In the course of the Aggies, I give them credit. You can win some of those national championships as well. Charles, back to you.
We had one remember with Coach Washington.
Well, yeah, his famous line. We make what?
All we do is make chicken. That's all we do. Man.
Boy, that was one of the best lines out there. Best lines out there. Shout out to Coach Keaton at Clark Atlanta University. That told us it's rat poison.
Rat poison.
Oh my goodness!
How dare you tell me my team good? That's rat poison.
I mean, can you blame him though? I understand he probably. I understand he brought half an island with him, but can you blame him?
Yeah. Hey man, he gets a lot of love. I tell y'all better watch out for Coach Keaton over there at Clark Atlanta University. I tried to tell folks. They got it right last year with basketball. Nobody listened to them.
Yeah, Coach Keaton trying to sneak up on folks.
Now he gonna turn it around fast.
All right.
He gonna turn it around fast.
Yeah, he tried to sneak up on folks. He ain't want you to put the spotlight on him that fast.
Look, man, I'm from Columbia, so I'm from Columbia, man. I know what he did in Allen. So look, you turn Allen around, you can make miracles happen, man. So it's gonna be interesting.
Let me ask you this question on both sides of this. You, Charles, what are your thoughts in terms of the depth between these two teams? Depth, Norfolk State, depth for FAMU. Which direction you going with that? You see it even? See FAMU having a little more depth, and how will that play out in this game and the rest of the season?
Well, I think one of the big things that we saw in the offseason is just FAMU was able to keep their recruiting. And I think that's goes big in terms of when you're talking about depth. I mean, they had one of the best recruiting classes coming into this upcoming season. I think that plays out eventually. And normally we start seeing quality depth. Quality depth kind of takes hold somewhere around the third quarter, and where you start kind of wearing a team down a little bit. So that'll be a very interesting thing to kind of pay attention to, who has that quality depth. And based on what we've seen Florida A&M bring in, I sort of give the edge to them in that regards.
Shout out to HBC Band Talk, Hell Wildcats. Fascinating to see what they got. They got Clark Atlanta Panthers on their schedule too. That's one that makes me a little nervous about the FCS D2 matchup. It is in Daytona, so that shouldn't be a problem. But that's one, if they get rolling, as you talk about Clark Atlanta, that's one they can snack out of there. And it'll get a lot of folks paying attention to that rat poison after that one. Shout out to AJ Niles. All wins are good wins. Coach Broadwell is another good one. Dave, what are your thoughts in terms of the depth of FAMU, Norfolk State? Where do you see they fit in terms of who may have the edge with the depth in terms of that matchup?
I give the edge to FAMU, but I will say Norfolk State bringing back the majority of their starters is a sign too, right? So I think we always have to take that into account. And I know they didn't have the greatest season last year, but at the same time, when you start thinking about the fact that they have that cohesiveness, and I think that's going to matter too. But when you talk about long term throughout the game, I'm still going to give the edge to FAMU because of how much recruiting they've done. Because they even though they lost a lot of players, they've refilled. We just got to see if they can play together.
Yeah,
in a couple of days.
Another good point in terms of what that looks like. Obviously, in these last couple of matchups, Jackson State pounded on South Carolina State last year, 37-7. The year before that, in 2022, you had Alabama State beating Bison 23-13. People call that the weather game, but it still goes down with the Hornets getting it done. 2021, you had North Carolina Central probably making their statement in terms of what things to come. They defeated Alcorn State Braves, which surprised some people, 23-14, as they got it done. And then you go 2020, COVID year, so there was no game. That was supposed to be a South Carolina State Grambling. 2019, Bethune-Cookman and Jackson State. Bethune-Cookman came from behind as Jackson State dominated that game early. Bethune-Cookman Wildcats got it done 36-15. In the first game, when things switched and moved the game from home and home for 2 years, with one of them being canceled by rain, and then being in Florida for a while at Citrusburg, opening up things in Legion Field. That was a win, if you would, with Prairie View debuting a new coach at the time. Prairie View Panthers beat up North Carolina Central 40-24 in that matchup. Fascinating when you think about what took place. That means that since the game has moved to Atlanta, the edge goes to the SWAC in terms of those matchups, winning 4 of those games, with one going to Bethune-Cookman 4-1. So it'll be fascinating to kind of see what that looks like. Overall edge, obviously, is to the MEAC. I'm fascinating to kind of see what continues to take place. 2025, you have North Carolina Central Eagles with the Southern matchup. In 2026 is Howard Bison and Alabama A&M Bulldogs.
You know, Doc,
go ahead, Joe.
One of the things that jumped out at me, especially last year, and we talk about the MEAC and they're just winning in the trenches. Jackson State in that game, and I was very surprised by that. They were able to beat South Carolina State up in the trenches. So that's just one of those things going to be looking at in regards to this game. We talked about whether, Norfolk State has to slow things down and kind of whoop on FAMU. I'm curious to see the amount of talent that FAMU brought in, whether they can hold up under, what we would think would be that withering MEAC attack of ground and pound.
Here's the thing when I think about this game, and as you know, we talk a lot of MEAC on HBCU Nightly. But here's the thing for me when I think about that game. When it comes to the MEAC as a whole, as a conference, we don't know. Like we have no idea what this is going to look like on the MEAC side of the ball, right? Like everybody's got a new quarterback, and I mean everybody. Mm-hmm. Everybody got a new quarterback. Everybody trying to figure it out, right? So for me, it's clear because of what happened with Otto Coons, because prior to the season, we were thinking Otto Coons was going to be the most experienced quarterback in that conference. So now that individual had got to go through his violation in the 4 games. And so now we're sitting here with a quarterback that's only played community college, never played Division I ball, but we know Dawson Odoms can coach. I don't think he's forgotten how to coach.
No doubt.
Yeah, so for me, from that perspective, I think Coach Odoms knows he's gonna have to slow this game down, because if FAMU starts fast, similar to what happened, similar to what Jackson State did last year, then this game's gonna get out of hand real fast. So it's imperative that Norfolk has to keep this game and slow this game down.
Great points. We'll take our last break. We'll come back on the other side, talk a little bit about HBCU NIL, new article that came out. Quoted in that article along with some other individuals in terms of the commissioner as well as several coaches. So we'll talk a little bit about that and get these gentlemen's thoughts before we close out the show. Stick with us as we get into our last break and come back on the other side.
At Automasters LLC, our mission is to serve our community by providing quality automobiles at affordable prices. All of our vehicles are inspected and certified to offer you the confidence in knowing you have a quality vehicle. Our goal is to provide you with a seamless process and positive experience for your automobile purchase. Financing recommendations and specific vehicle inquiries are available at your request. You can find us at www.automasters06.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Also, please feel free to contact Terrence Miles at 601-927-7794. And tell him Sonia sent you.
Atlanta, Georgia. The HBCU football capital hosts the Cricket MEAC SWAC Challenge on August 24th. Florida A&M Rattlers, Norfolk State Spartans. SWAC versus MEAC. The rivalry is real. Come out to Center Park Stadium to see the returning HBCU national champions and two of the best HBCU bands in the land, the Marching 100 and the Spartan Legion. The day starts with a kickoff fan experience tailgate and concludes with a primetime matchup on ABC. For more information, visit MEACSWACChallenge.com.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
Dr. Mills inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Mike Washington is out on assignment. We're here with David and Charles Bishop as we prepare to head to Atlanta. Charles and myself. Dave, are you going to be able to get down there? Or are you going to be watching it on television as ABC, 7 o'clock at night, prime time? What are your thoughts?
I'm hoping to be watching it in 4K in my studio, and I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy the whole game. I'm looking forward to it, man, because college football's back. I will be in HD for this one.
That means you're going to have your surround sound as well, man.
Oh yes. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's
don't let it get you food now. Dave still comes down to the Celebration Bowl. We got the close rank last year in terms of getting it and getting things started the right way the day before and early that morning. So we look forward to continuing those shenanigans, if you would. But let's get into this article from AP. Prospects, a player, pay another wrinkle for HBCU schools where big NIL deals still taking root. Athletic programs at historically black college universities are facing another wrinkle. This is by John Zinner, AP sports writer, that was released a couple of days ago. Fascinating. I got a chance to get a quote in here. I also got a chance to hook him up with a Mark Smith, who came up with the Icon 1901 Collective in the April of 2022. And then he spread it out where he now helps a lot of HBCUs. Just finished some big deals with Prairie View A&M University. He's quoted in here as saying, quote, "These kids want to be inclusive in the NIL space, and many of these universities don't have the resources," end quote, Smith. So he's been able to go out on a more national perspective and provide NIL deals with HBCUs that have worked with him. As I said, he's worked with Grambling, Prairie View, and a couple of other ones to name in terms of how he's gotten in space. There's some big deals that are going to be popping up on the screen pretty quickly. But one of the things the article talked about is on the outside, the biggest and wealthiest athletic programs, the final strain of offering robust NIL options to colleges is a constant concern. Is often especially pronounced at HBCUs. The four major HBCU conferences recently agreed to work together to increase the value of HBCUs and send more athletes to the pros, but now there is a wrinkle with this NIL. We talked about NIL space. We've talked about, obviously, the House lawsuit and where it's going. So this is another wrinkle and another perspective where he got some expertise from those that are around the culture. I had a chance to be quoted in the article and interview for it. The quote that I was quoted in, among others in here, was, quote, "There may be some questions about how are they going to be able to navigate this. But its past experiences, any indication they'll be find a way based on the alumni coming together and figure out a way to push these institutions forward," end quote. And so that's one of the perspectives of coming back. Some of the coaches obviously talk about their concern. SWAC commissioner also made a statement in here. As he said, he doesn't know what the athletic landscape will look like down the road, but he knows big money schools and conferences don't either. And that whatever happens will ultimately trickle down to his league and the rest of the FCS. So I think it's fascinating too, while we'll opine on this and people want to know quicker than most, is that there's still an open framework in terms of NIL. So that's one of the things there. But with that being said, Dave, I wanted to come to you and kind of get your thoughts, if you would, in terms of the overall article, and then more specifically, where are the Aggies in terms of the NIL, and what do you see from that perspective first, and then we'll take a bigger look, if you would, with HBCU specifically at the FCS, MEAC, SWAC, independent programs, and then maybe even at the Division II level.
So this article, this is going to always be a challenge, not just for the big money programs, the P4. It's no longer the 5, so the P4s and things of that sort. Like, now, and it's not. I mean, we're down to Tupac,
right.
so it's just P4. So when you talk about the big money schools, they're trying to figure it out. They're under the impression that the alumni is going to take care of this, but we're already seeing ranges where they're going outside of the alumni to try to get this money to make this work, which is scary. I'll be honest with you. I think it's scary, fascinating, but scary at the same time. Because when you talk about ruining traditions, whenever you have too much money involved, that's for traditions to go away, because that takes precedence over everything else.
Right.
So, so this is from an HBCU standpoint. As you said, we're always going to figure out a way to make this work. And the culture, the HBCU culture as a whole, that's what's going to get the student athletes here, because we always lean towards academics first anyway. We always lean towards that when it comes to that and athletic. So I think that's a significant advantage that we have over everybody else, because a lot of these kids tend to not leave with the degrees when they go over there. So everybody's just trying to chase the money. But from the standpoint of what A&T is doing, I mean, we have the Pride of A&T NIL collective that we have going on right now, to give give money for the athletes, and then we also have the A&T, the Aggie Exchange, that we also have from that standpoint. So, because the bottom line is, man, these students are looking for this money. Like, and in some aspects, I don't blame them, because if they think they're good enough to do it, they're going to go. I mean, it's just like a job, right? If you think you can make money somewhere else, make more money somewhere else, you're probably gonna walk. A&T's football program has already gone through it, and I had a funny joke a few months ago when we were losing volleyball players. Like, yeah, volleyball players are getting paid too, guys. Like, we have to start thinking about this. Like, I think we're focused on the football aspect, but A&T's already lost football players to NFL NIL. We've lost track stars to NIL, so it's already hitting us. So you got to be able to work through that and be able to keep, because you're pretty much recruiting constantly, and it's not just football; it's everywhere: football, basketball, women's basketball, across the board. So, but we have to come up with a landscape to make it so we can all do it. And I do agree. And then we heard recently about Howard trying to sell a portion of their basketball program. Well, Kenny Blakeney, portion of their basketball program, which is smart. I love it.
Yeah.
But you have to we have to think of creative ways to make sure we are competitive and we can still get some good kids here. So
I'm glad you brought that into the conversation in terms of the dialogue about Howard, and we took a deep dive in terms of different ways you could look at that from that perspective. But going back to this article, Charles, from your perspective, what did you glean from this article? Was it anything new, or was it just another perspective of what you said many times about NIL?
Yeah, I don't know if it was anything new, but the question I had, and I think, Dave, you brought up in terms of being creative, that you look outside of the alumni circles. And I guess my question is, for an HBCU athletic program, is that a dangerous thing? I mean, because I guess when you take a look at NIL collectives from an HBCU standpoint, you're going to run out of X amount of athletic donors or people who want to be part of an athletic collective. Do you look at quote unquote foreign investment, if you will? I take a look at LIV Golf. With the Saudi Public Investment Fund, the way they invested in LIV Golf, is that a viable option for HBCUs? I mean, I'm curious whether I'm curious as to whether there could be synergy in terms of looking outside of the traditional athletic donor. I mean, there's a small number of us who even want to do the athletic part, be a part of the NIL collective. We all know to give to the university, but to give specifically to athletics, that's still something that I don't know every, alumni fan base jumps in on.
Yeah, I do agree from that aspect. When it comes to like the Saudis, and it's funny because I do a lot of pro stuff as well. So I've been paying attention to how these guys are moving when it came to the golf. And you see my shirt about esports. They're out here dipping the money in the esports. They got this big tournament going on with esports right now.
Yeah,
out in Saudi Arabia. I've been watching it. It's been fun to watch. But it's I went to one of the tournaments where you could qualify for it. So it's a lot to go through. And now with the Celtics putting their team for sale, the first thing I said was the Saudis about to buy these guys because they just want a piece of everything.
Sure.
Right.
But it's a matter of, they're going to go after P4 first. So like there was recently something talking about Colorado might be looking to get into the Saudi money. Like, so when you take those things into account, when they start going to the P4, they'll probably head down to the next level. And when you talk about brand, outside of the P4, it's us. It ain't the group of 5 guys. It's us. It's HBCUs. We're the strong brand here. So I think they will get to us, but they're trying to go after the big fish right now because they're trying to get the biggest value possible. So it's a delicate balance of what you got to give back to. So that's where it gets fascinating because they're probably gonna want a piece. They're not just gonna just drop the money and have fun.
Well, I'm really fascinated about your question, and I think our ability to navigate this NIL space is really for us to desegregate the market, right? To really diversify in terms of how we look at the marketplace.
Yep.
And so I agree with you from the framework that athletic departments are looking at those that support athletics in terms of the donation. But I would say in some places, in terms of the totality of the marketplace, that's probably relatively small. The question that I have for me that comes to mind is, can you put an NIL program together that seeks new entry, right? For those that would be more enticed to support an athlete than for whatever reason, maybe the athletic program. So could you get some new people tied to it? Just like you have on the academic side, you have some people that prefer to specifically give their money for scholarships, right? Or specific programs. Maybe in some ways that you can get some new individuals that would be enticed about supporting in their minds directly to the athletes, right? And so that's something I think that you really want to be aggressive if you're an NIL collective or in terms of what you see going on with Mark Smith, who's tried to open it up in such a way that you do not look at the individual institutions, right? That you look at HBCUs more collective, whether it's an entire conference or let's say all the FCS programs or even the D2 programs. There may be some brands that want to find a way to get into the HBCU sports beyond what they would do to support the SWAC conference, if you would, as a sponsor, but they want to be more directly providing financial means to celebrate their brand in terms of athletes. And so that may be a way where you can get a national brand to come on, right, to support athletes from an NIL perspective to help market their brand. The other thing that I think is fascinating that I imagine that you would agree with is I'm not sure how well we've done with regional or local brands. Supporting a conference or institutions. We tend to look at more of the national brands, and we've done relatively well at that level. But I think there are smaller businesses. When I think smaller business, the mom and pops are one thing, and certainly you want to get in that. But I think there are the next stage of businesses that would be interested in terms of potentially finding a new, unique way to grow their business, right? And this may be an entry point in to do that. The other one is that I'm not sure that we've really focused on is looking at the niche market of athletes and those that follow athletes or younger current students, right? They have a spending power And there are some businesses that are directly wanting to attach themselves to that. So oftentimes, I think when we think about NIL and supporting, which is to your point, we think of an older demographic. But what about that younger demographic? Is that one that you can get into where a business would have an interest, not necessarily them paying directly in an NIL, but find an NIL that would support some HBCU athletes because of they want to be able to get to that marketplace where they are versus maybe their older alumni marketplace. So I think to your overall point, if you're going to really be able to take advantage of the NIL space, which is one of the things I got out of this article, it's going to be a need for folks to be more creative. And you open up the show acknowledging me as the dean giving a speech in terms of where we want to go about the 1%, right? And part of that 1% conversation I had, to your point, and I'm glad now because I can tie it in even more so, is talking about 1% better every day. But also doing that in a strategic manner, an innovative manner. What are you going to do next? As you saw yesterday when we opened up things to all the faculty, we had a speaker that came in and we had the leadership from the president on down to the provost talking about reaching this younger group about being more innovative in the classroom, being more innovative in terms of the touch points, which I'd imagine in a lot of ways is what you saw at Clark University to increase their GPA, to increase the interest of the enrollment. What we saw with North Carolina A&T, to be frank, is they took those large steps over the last 10 years to be the largest enrolled HBCU. A lot of that was not just being smart and putting your information, but there were some creative things that they did that they probably hadn't done at A&T before. And so this is a new opportunity to get into that NIL marketplace. And the final point I make here, as you alluded to, you're right. No, it won't change if you're not being innovative in the approach of how you're going to make things change. With that, we'll close it up. Great dialogue, great conversation. It's good to get you into the fold, David. We'll be bringing you back. As I said, we have the opportunity to now kind of showcase what you're going to bring to the table, but I would be remiss if I didn't put this out there. Brandon King wanted to know what arcade cabinets you have behind.
So I'm a big fighting game kid. So Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Killer Instinct, and I got MVS X, which is Neo Geo. So there's a bunch of Neo Geo games, your Fatal Furies, your King of Fighters, things of that sort. So, you know, I keep myself busy in here.
I like it. It's fascinating because that's one of my things that I always wanted, my own man cave with an arcade. So I'm jealous officially of Dave. So
I don't have space to put them on. I got a bunch downstairs. Sure. I might swap them. I mean, it doesn't take because it doesn't take much to bring them up and down because they're arcade one up, so it don't take much. But like I got like a NBA Jam one downstairs, Ninja Turtles downstairs. I keep my kids occupied here with all these games around this house. So
I love it. Well, you are what they call the best dad. You get all the points in great holiday gifts, I'm sure, in Christmas gifts.
No, I get the same stuff everybody else do as a father. You know that. I get the same gifts.
Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share your podcast to your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, come from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time, 9 o'clock as we start up the following Sunday at 9 a.m. As Charles and I will hit the road. It's time to get on the road. We'll fly out to Atlanta tomorrow to make sure you can get your updates. Make sure you check out Game Time. We will be live from the set on Saturday. We plan to kick off around 3 o'clock, and that is Eastern Time. So start tuning in, looking at us. We'll get more information on what that looks like. We will be live in bringing you all the sights and sounds from the MEAC SWAC Challenge 2024 in Atlanta. With that being said, we look forward to next week as we discuss the latest news right here on Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you check out on Saturday, Carlos Brown with the Carlos Brown Show. as well as continue to support O&G Strike Zone. And then on Sunday, as we close things out, make sure you check out Sports Wrap with Brian and AD. We have more things coming for you, so keep us on the mind. Lastly, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube is Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, DrKNYATTACAVIL. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles?
Of course.
Test time, Dave.
Oh, boy, I'm terrible.
Roy, help him out. Help your single brother out.
Lecture.
Oh, yeah, I was.